Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It is crazy windy today, blowing stuff all over the yard. And while I do have one of them little fuzzy things to kind of help block the wind noise, I decided I would just come on inside. Been out trying to work in the garden. It's always a slow day, and you can make fun of me if you want. It's fine. But the Mondays after our monthly meeting is we try to keep it as a slow day as possible because we feel like we've just been beat up. It's a lot of work and we love it, and the people that we get to meet, the connections we make, the new people that come and that we get to meet them and connect them with other people that may live close to them. Found out someone that had been coming off and on because they lived, distance off. So they weren't local. They were wanting to be local, and so they would come as they could every few months. So they came yesterday. Hadn't seen them in a few months, and let me know that they were purchasing a piece of property to move here. And of course, my wife has been in communication with them quite a bit over the last few months, and come to find out. They're going to be a pretty close neighbor, which is exciting. They're really good people, and so that's exciting to find out that another person, like-minded individual, family that's wanting to, be off grid and find community is moving pretty close to us. So that things like that are exciting to help other people. That come there and they think that maybe there's no one else like them. They have to drive so far to find someone, and then come to find out there's someone that's there that's actually not too far away from them. So that's always exciting. And then the children, it's fun to see these children because most of the children, and I'll say this as far as I know, all the children that attend these meetings, the families, they're all homeschooled. And so it's good for them to be able to come there and build friendships and stuff, and it's have a safe place, because anymore there's just not a lot of safe places anymore that you can take your children. And it doesn't, when I say safe, I don't necessarily mean that every place you take them there are these horrible predators that's going to take off with your children. I mean, that's becoming more and more true. But still safe in the sense that your children can be influenced by things that you don't allow in your house. You take them to a public park and there's children there playing that, live in a home that they do things that you don't agree with. And so your children are picking up, worldly things. And so it's great for the children to be able to play together all day. And for those of you that don't know where the building is, there's a small playground outside and a lot of open area. And it's safe for them to be out there and play. And so it's just a good day. It's just a good day. One of the children had a birthday, and so had to bring him up front and sing happy birthday to him and embarrass him a little bit, because he's getting to that age that it's a little embarrassing, but that's okay. The point is that the community and having that and finding that is very important. And I'm not saying all this to brag. I'm saying this to encourage you to do the same. I do have an announcement to make for this channel. For me, this is a big deal. This is probably the biggest deal for me on this channel ever since I started making videos. Now, I think that most of you will think it's a big deal, but some of you may more than others get it. Tomorrow, I will go ahead and do my normal morning video, and then after that, I'm recording an interview with someone that is, well, let's just say a very, very big name. Probably most would consider this person the godfather of the liberty and constitutional freedom movement in this country. He's been doing this for a very long time, and I will have the honor tomorrow morning of interviewing Dr. Ron Paul, and then that video will be put up tomorrow afternoon. It'll be my afternoon video, so please plan on watching that. It's a very exciting thing to work this out, and unless something happens, but I've been in communication with him and his people. It looks like tomorrow morning it'll happen, and then you'll be able to watch that tomorrow afternoon. So I'm very excited about that. That's a very big deal, and it's exciting because I come from that Ron Paul movement. I don't know that he was the first person that opened my eyes. I mean, I was homeschooled myself, and my mother, and that was back when it was rare. We're talking back in the early '80s, where you still had to kind of sneak around and hide to do it. And my mother and father homeschooled me because they saw then that the school systems were corrupt and evil and the brainwashing, and that was back in the early '80s. So I did grow up very much more open-minded about these things than most people, but Dr. Paul was definitely one of those that took it to the next level with me. Him and a few other, Aaron Russo and a few others in the early 2000s, learning about the Federal Reserve, learning about the IRS, and Social Security system, Social Security numbers, the corruption of the government, listening to early days of Alex Jones. I remember listening to Alex Jones when you could only listen to him on shortwave, before there really was internet radio. So those are the areas that I started cutting my teeth on. Alex Jones, he still tells a lot of the truth. I don't listen to him very much anymore because it's becoming harder and harder to listen to. But he's still pretty accurate. I still haven't figured him out who's really paying his bills. But anyways, we won't go down that road. The point is tomorrow you'll be able to view an interview with myself and Dr. Ron Paul here on this channel, and hopefully we'll be talking about not just how things are going, because he has been preaching this message for, my goodness, 40 years now? Longer than that. He was one of the very first, if not the first, because when Ronald Reagan was running for president, so this is back in 1978, 79, he was one of the first Republicans that came out publicly supporting Ronald Reagan. And then when Ronald Reagan got into office, he was like the first Republican, if not the only Republican, to speak out against and to campaign against him, because he felt that Ronald Reagan had gone off course from what he said he would, that he became too big of a government guy, passing legislation, gun control measures, and things like that. And as much as the Republican Party loves to, praise Ronald Reagan, he wasn't perfect by any means. And so Ron Paul, he was out there a long time ago, 30, 40 years ago at least, speaking out against this stuff. And now it's all coming true. The things that he talked about 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's starting to really happen. We're seeing the results of exponential government growth. We're seeing the results of a Federal Reserve and a fiat monetary system unchecked, where, it slowly progressed from being gold back to being this fractional where, it's for every $100 we have a dollar, in bank, or $10, and then down to where it's nothing now. They don't have to keep any reserves now, but little by little they whittled that away. We've watched the unfettered spending of what that is. I was looking, just doing some research of reminding myself of things of the past. In 2008, when Dr. Paul ran to become the Republican nominee for president, of course he did not win that, but when he was running, the national debt was under 10 trillion. It was like 9.5, 9.8 trillion. In 2008, it's over 30 trillion, folks. It's over $30 trillion. I mean, we've gone into debt like $22 trillion and a little over 10 years, maybe 15 years. 15 years we've gone into debt $22 trillion. Can you start to wrap your head around that if it took us 240 some years to get to $9.8 trillion in debt, and in the last 22 to 25 years we've added an additional $23 trillion in debt. That's astronomical. And that's not, you can't say, well, that's how much we've spent. No, we've spent all the money that we got in revenue and an additional $23 trillion. That's just mind-boggling. I know a lot of people say, well, it's the military-industrial complex. Well, that's a big chunk of it. It is. But it's not all that. It can't be. And if it is, those $2 million toilet seats and $50,000 hammers that they make, that money's obviously going to something else. There's obviously something else that's going, because our military has been downsizing for 20 years. Now, yes, we've been increasing technology in some areas, not all areas. I mean, we're just now starting to develop a hypersonic missile that both China and Russia have. They have actually more advanced nuclear capabilities than we do. We have advanced ourselves certainly in other areas. But to the numbers of 20, 30, 40 trillion dollars, where's all that money going? Well, a big part of it is the devaluation of our money. The dollar's worth less. It just is. It's worth a lot less than it was. Look at the average cost for a home, a brand new home in 2008, and compare it to now. There's a substantial difference, and it's not because the houses are worth more. It's not because you're worth more. It's because the dollar's worth less. And so that's what people, they think that, adjusted for inflation or increased costs of living, we come up with all these terms that, well, it's just natural for a, 1,500 square foot house to, 10 years later, it's going to be worth twice that much. No, it shouldn't be. It takes the same amount of labor, if not less, because of increase in technology, to produce that house. It doesn't take more labor. It takes the same amount, if not less. And labor is where really the intrinsic value of anything is. I mean, that's what makes gold, gives it gold its value, is the labor that's put into it. Labor is the real money. That's the real money. It's more real than gold and silver. So why do things cost more? Why is your gallon of milk and your dozen of eggs more expensive? Why is your pound of ground beef more expensive? Well, it's because the dollar's worth less, folks. It's just worth less. It has a smaller and smaller buying power. And we've been watching over the last 20 years, the global dominance of the dollar has reduced about 25%. And that's not saying that its buying power is 25% less. Its global dominance is 25% less. And as we see the dollar have less global dominance, it's going to have less buying power. And if we continue to spend, which we are, we're getting ready to increase the debt ceiling at least $1.5 trillion. That's the minimum number that they're willing to, at least $1.5 trillion. It could be more. These are the kind of things that Dr. Paul's been talking about for decades. And a few people listened, and a few people woke up, and books were written, and documentaries were made. In fact, an entire revolution, songs were made about all of this. Many of the people that are in kind of prominent positions today in that kind of freedom, liberty, Tea Party, whatever movement exist in with their their popularity and their platform because of Dr. Ron Paul. And unfortunately, no one paid attention. No one listened. At least not enough people listened. That's the thing. A lot of people still, of course, because it's still important, it's still relevant, talk about the 2020 election. I don't think we're still allowed to talk about that on YouTube. So you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the 2020 election, who was elected and who's in office and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people think that this was the first time this ever happened. This is the first time. I mean, look at this. We got this guy over here that can't get 5 people to show up to a campaign rally. And you got this guy over here bringing in 20, 30, and 50,000 people, and this guy wins. What's up with that? Well, guess what, folks? If you went around in 2008, that was the same thing that was going on. You had this one guy that no one really wanted to vote for in the Republican Party. No one was excited about him, okay? And there wasn't a whole lot of pizzazz, and there wasn't a big following, and people, certainly young people, and there wasn't people across party lines. And then you had this guy that personally doesn't have a lot of pizzazz, a very meek, kind of quiet, small-statured man. But the words he said invigorated tens of thousands of people. And there were rallies back then. There were rallies of people following after Ron Paul, trying to push him to get him to the Republican nomination. And it didn't happen. And a lot of people believe that it was very shady dealings that led to that. And so this is not the first time we've seen someone that was very popular, that the people wanted, somehow in sneaky ways not be elected. This kind of stuff's been going on for a long time, folks. All the things that we're seeing, the COVID stuff. It's not the first time that they've manipulated things like this. It's just the first time that they've done it so blatantly on such a broad, widespread way, and that people were really reacting to it, both negatively and positively. And that's really the thing. All the stuff that we're seeing, it's not really new. There's not really anything new under the sun anyways. It's just they're doing it so out in the open. They're not hiding it anymore. They're not ashamed of their message. They're not quiet about what they're trying to do, because they feel very emboldened. And the reason why they feel emboldened is because they know they've pretty much won this game. They know they have enough of the people supporting, enough people that they can do these kind of things, and most people aren't going to stop them. Going back to, Ron Paul and him being elected or running for office, you had people across party lines. That's back when, if you were still, it was starting to change then, but there were still people that considered themselves liberals or socially left libertarians that were very conservative fiscally and that were anti-government, the whole In the Fed movement, and things like that we saw on the Wall Street and stuff. That these were people that today would be considered liberal, but they were actually speaking out against government. And now we've got liberals, and we've got a lot of, just regular run-of-the-mill conservatives and Republicans all falling in line because they have to put this on, because they have to get this, because they have to do what they're told to do. They just have to, Soon enough, CBDC will be here. This latest bank was collapsed and gobbled up by J.P. Morgan. And I have a feeling, although I don't know, but I have a feeling that these bank failures are increasing the likelihood of CBDC. And every time something like this happens, it's going to give the Fed and their CBDC a little bit more fuel to say, hey, if you want this to stop happening, all these billions of dollars that are being lost, there is a way to fix that. Here, try our brand new money system. They're going to wrap it up in a pretty bow. I've been saying that for a long time. And then this is going to continue going on. Now, I don't know what Ron Paul's opinion is on this, and we'll see if we can get it tomorrow. But I suspect that we're very nearing the point of no return. And many believe, and I kind of personally believe this, but I'm trying to be optimistic. I know I have a show, a channel and stuff, so I'm trying to be optimistic. But I suspect we're past the point of no return. But even if we're not past that point, we've got to be nearing that point of no return, meaning that you can't necessarily turn the ship around, at least not easily, at least not just through electing a different president or something like that. Like the only way I think at this point to turn around what's happened is a lot of pain. Like there's a lot of things that's going to have to happen. A lot of people are going to lose stuff, and a lot of heartache in the economy, and a lot of heartache when it comes to war and our prominence and socially. But it's either that or complete collapse altogether. And I think that's personally where I see we're going on this. We're not watching a recession, a soft or a hard landing. And some other people are saying, well, it's actually it's more of a depression. It's more of a depression that that we're getting kind of into that 1929 kind of time period. My opinion is it's worse than that. We are living through. We're at the beginning to early on, first third. I don't think we've peaked yet, but we're living through a complete collapse. Economically, it's probably going to be something similar to Venezuela. Socially, it could be something as horrific as the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. Maybe not necessarily the concentration death camps, but certainly one portion of the population rising up to purposely and specifically destroy the other ones, and not just socially destroy them or ideologically or economically destroy them, but actually really destroy them. We're starting to see that. We're starting to see that sentiment. And we're seeing very little pushback of like, oh, no, that's too far. That's too extreme. We are going through some devastating time periods of not just American history, but really human history, because this isn't just an American thing. It's easily just a Western thing, but it's really a global thing. We're seeing massive shifts and changes happening everywhere. We're seeing the global dominance, a new order rising up in China. And as much as some people might say that, well, at least China, they kind of hold to traditional values and they're not into all this trans and gay stuff. And well, that's partly true. But China is also, for the most part, a very godless nation. And they are definitely a communist nation. And so to have communism that this country has been fighting for like 100 years, fighting against communism, to now take over as the world leader, that's going to be a massive shock. That's going to be hard. Now, they are a free market, communist, but not really, not when you really dig into it. It's going to be shocking for this country. It's going to be shocking for the West. It's going to be devastating. We are experiencing a collapse. And it's a slow feeling collapse, but that's how collapses go. I mean, Rome did not collapse in 6 months. It actually took decades for it to collapse. I don't really think it'll take decades for America to collapse, because we live in a much faster paced world. We're globalized and everything's instant at your fingertips. And so, news spreads instantly. So things just happen faster than they did 2,000 years ago. But it takes time. It's not an hour and 20-minute movie, folks. These things do take time. And so that's what we're watching. We're watching a slower progression than what's expected, but really it's fast, of an empire. And that's what we've been, an empire collapsing. And if only more people had listened to someone like Dr. Ron Paul 30, 40 years ago, it could be very different. I don't know. I would think that if things had really turned around, a few decades ago, we could have saved things. But maybe it was too late back then also. But the point is that it is happening, and we have to get prepared for it. Now, I'll be very honored tomorrow to bring you an interview with Dr. Ron Paul so that we can kind of discuss things and maybe get his take on how people need to be reacting to this and how severe this is. Because as many of you know and as many of you believe, we are living through some really harsh, serious times, and we have to be getting ready for it. We have to prepare. We don't want to be steamrolled. We don't want this ship to sink and us still attached to it, because it seems to be sinking for sure. You want to be severing those ties and moving out on your own and being as self-sufficient as you can and getting your houses in order. You need to be preparing yourselves and your families mentally, physically, and spiritually for the things that are coming, because they are coming at us, folks. No doubt about it. They're coming at us. And I suspect they'll only increase in severity and intensity and speed as this goes along. It's just we're in kind of this exponential growth phase, and we need to be getting ready for it. Folks, thank you all for watching.
Throughout all history, precious metals have been the one solid asset that has held their value through banking failures, hyperinflation, and financial collapses. Visit the link below to moneymetals.com to find a wide variety of silver and gold to secure your wealth with real money. When I purchase online, I choose moneymetals.com because of their fast and secure service and competitive pricing on a wide variety of precious metals. moneymetals.com in the link below.